What's going on, y'all? Thanks for checking in the Khaliis Take. You know what to do if you haven't. Please like, subscribe. Also hit that notification bell just so you get the newest and the bonus content first. So let's just go ahead and jump right in to what the topic is today. We all know Clippers Nation is depleted. We all know Clippers Nation is down just because Kawhi and PG is not there. But they do have some other parts and other pieces that are there. And you have to be accountable for what is there and what you have on the floor. And you have to just take it in stride, what you have. And right now, we have a bunch of role players. And Clippers Nation, or Clippers organization, I should say, hopefully has a plan going into, for the rest of the season, going through the season. And a part of that plan is going to have to be Reggie Jackson. And my question is, can Clippers Nation depend on Reggie Jackson to continuously keep scoring the way he has been to keep them afloat in the playoff picture? Now, I think that's a big question to ask, or a big task to ask of Reggie Jackson, just because he's never really been a number one guy. And if he has been a number one guy, the team he's been on as being the number one guy wasn't winning, because he's definitely not a number one guy on a team. He doesn't have that type of talent to carry a team and put him on his back and, be a leader of a team and win a championship. He's definitely not that type of player. He's a very, very good role player. Now, as far as what the Clippers need from him now, they need a lot from Reggie Jackson right now. I mean, the last few games, I will say, I gotta say, the last few games, I'd say the last 3 games, he's been playing very well the last 3 games. He's been putting up good points. He's been shooting efficient. He's averaged about 24 points. I think 26, 19, and 22 is what he had the last 3 games. They had a very disappointing loss against the New York Knicks, which I thought that's a team they would beat on this huge road trip they're having. They're in the midst of a 9-game road trip. It was a huge loss to the New York Knicks, because they had just come off of, a big win, a 24-point deficit, I believe, against the Philadelphia 76ers, where Joel Embiid scored like 40 points and like 13 rebounds. And they found a way to come all the way back and beat the 76ers at home, in Philly, on Doc Rivers' watch, which was definitely a superior win for the Clippers, because I know they enjoyed that because of, just because of Doc Rivers and the whole situation, the bubble and everything. It just kind of, puts a stamp on everything. Doc Rivers is no good as far as a coach, if you ask me. He was better back in the day. I think his style of teaching and of basketball worked more so back in the day with the Celtics, when he had Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, and KG and Rondo. But then again, it's hard to question that too. That's questionable as well, because he did have like a big 4, and nobody can really stop all 4 of them players, which is the reason why I think they went to back-to-back finals at that time. But nevertheless, the Clippers got a big victory there, and I thought that was a big moral victory on top of just of the fact that they needed a victory like that just to build their confidence. And I thought it would carry over to the New York Knicks game, but somehow the Clippers laid an egg once again, and it was just horrible. But a loss is a loss. There's nothing they could do. They have to move forward, and they have to try and redeem themselves and just make up for it as they go. It's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy. But, like I said, the question is, can they rely on Reggie Jackson to continue playing, the way he's played the last few games? He's averaged about 24, 25 points, shooting very efficient, shooting about 45% from the field, which is very good for him. And that's the Reggie Jackson a lot of people thought they would see this whole season. And so far, I would say he's had moments where he's played pretty decent, but he's had a lot of moments in this season where he's dipped, where he hasn't played up to the level of expectation that, a lot of people thought he would, pick up from the playoffs last year. And I think that's the problem a lot of times. A lot of times people look at a player and watch what they do in one playoff series or one playoff setting for that season, and just expect going into the next season they're going to play this exact same way and have the same exact mentality of playing, and they're going to just go out there and play to a level of of high dominance that they might have shown in the playoffs. But sometimes we get sidetracked by the fact of who the player really is and what their career dictates of how they have been throughout their career. Now, of course, Reggie Jackson's career, if you look at his career, it is more or less personified by him being a very good role player and having moments where he really has bursts where he breaks out and, plays really well. But the consistency of that really hasn't shown that throughout his career, but he always has been a solid player to me. So, I definitely expected him to come into this season, maybe averaging 19, 20 points a game just because Kawhi wasn't there. Him and PG was there. He was definitely the second go-to guy now that Kawhi isn't there. Whereas if Kawhi is there, he's the third go-to guy, but still, he would get more shots and he would have more of the green light. And I don't feel like he took advantage of that much this season, but so far these last few games he's been taking advantage of it quite well. And as of right now, Clippers Nation have to hope that he can continue doing that, because if he doesn't continue shooting well and you have inconsistency from Marcus Morris as always, and you got other players in and out the lineup for COVID and injuries and things like that, I don't see where the Clippers are going to fall. I don't know where they're going to be at the end of the season. A lot of people talk and say that Kawhi and PG, especially Nicholas Batum actually said it the other day in an interview, they hope to get them back in maybe about 6 weeks or maybe somewhat after the All-Star break, something like that. They hope to get both of those players back, but you're kind of banking on something that you really don't know, and that is never a good thing. Because speaking on the unknown, it can go either way. It can go from, they'll be back in 6 to 8 weeks from that to, maybe they might miss the remainder of the season. Now, of course, you hope that doesn't happen or anything like that, but you have to understand that's always a possibility when it comes to injuries and the healing process and the progression of, where the injury was to where it is now. And that's just something that, Clippers Nation going to have to deal with. And, you hope that, players like Reggie Jackson on there can, give them a boost and keep playing at a high level. But, even if Reggie plays at a high level going forward, you have to ask yourself, where's his other contribution going to come from? Now, these last couple games, I do want to point out, my man Zubac has been playing very well these last couple games. And I feel like sometimes the reason why his progression doesn't get there is because Ty Lue kind of pulls him at the wrong time just to give Isaiah Hartenstein more minutes. And, he has to fit Serge Ibaka in there as well. And I definitely understand that. But I tell Clippers Nation this. I know Zubac has not been the player that he could be, or the player that a lot of people envision him to be. I understand that, but I will say this: he does have talent enough to be the anchor in the 5 spot in that big man rotation to help the Clippers win a lot of games. He can do that. I've seen his talent. We see his talent sporadically here and there. It's not consistent enough, I will give you that, but he does have talent enough to do it. And these last couple games, he's been playing very well. So, I'm not going to speak too much on Zubac because I don't want to jinx him or anything. Hopefully he continues to play well and build confidence off these last couple games that he's played, where he's put up some monster numbers, double-doubles. I think in one game, a couple games ago against Denver, he had like 32 points. You know what I'm saying? You got to give a man credit for playing that well, especially when you don't expect it. And hopefully he along with maybe somebody else, hopefully Marcus Morris, since we all keep hoping that he turns into be a consistent player, something he hasn't been ever, seemed like. Hopefully he comes along with Reggie Jackson, because I don't care if Reggie Jackson scores 30 points a game. They're not going to win many games if he's the only one that's really actually keeping them afloat and doing the scoring. It has to be a secondary or third player that can go out there and help. Now, of course, defensively, I think they will be fine. I think they have good defensive players still. That their defense is actually still pretty good. But, you got to be able to score, too. You can't rely all on defense. You got to be able to put the ball in the basket. And that's the only way they're really actually going to, propel through this season. Now, I will say this also, I believe Reggie Jackson can keep up his scoring. The only problem with Reggie Jackson that I see, if you're depending on Reggie Jackson, it could be a very, very condescending situation, because if you're depending on Reggie Jackson to be your number one scorer going forward, a lot can go wrong with that. Because if he doesn't get the help that he needs from other players, I'd say at least 2 or 3 other players to contribute in double figures consistently every game, not only the Clippers will lose, but the Clippers will be one-dimensional. And what I mean by that is when Reggie Jackson is your number one guy, or when he's one of your guys that you actually depend on with scoring, the one thing you have to give and take with him is isolation basketball. And honestly, that's where Reggie thrives the most. He's good at one-on-one isolation basketball, but the only problem with that is that doesn't equate to winning a lot of times. That's just you getting your stats. That's you playing at a high level or playing well at that moment, getting your numbers, but a lot of times it doesn't equate to winning. And I understand the Clippers have to allow him to do that because that's his game and that's the way he plays, and he's really the only top option that they have scoring right now because their roster is so depleted and down. It's hard to really look elsewhere other than him being possibly the number one guy in regards to getting the green light and scoring. And like I said, that could be a problem for the Clippers because, like I said before, isolation basketball gets you beat in a lot of games, and especially against a lot of good teams that'll get you beat, unless the good team is actually coming in there and not taking you seriously because you don't have 90% of your players, and you slip up and get a win against them. In which I think some of that has attributed to some of the Clippers wins lately, especially this year, 2022. They've had some big wins this year, and nobody really can explain how they happen. I think a part of it is because, like I said, some teams just don't take them serious. Now that there's no Kawhi, there's no PG, and there's a bunch of young guys on there that they never heard of, Amir Coffey, Brandon Boston Jr., they haven't heard of these guys, what I'm saying? So it's hard for other great NBA players to take them serious sometimes because they don't have enough talent for them to even know who's on the roster. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I definitely feel like that's attributed to it. But I mean, hey, a win is a win. And, the Clippers work hard for their wins. They do. I mean, when they're down by 25 and they come back, that's a hard effort win. And you can't take that away from them, nor would I ever try to do that. I'm just saying that the Clippers going to have to find ways to lull teams to sleep, get ugly, play ugly basketball, not pretty at all, and just trying to find a way to grind out these games and win. That's how the Clippers are going to have to do. And if they're depending on Reggie Jackson, that could be a good thing because he can have games where he can score 25, 30 points. He has the potential to do that. He can score at a high clip. He definitely could put the ball in the basket, but a lot of isolation basketball gets you beat a lot of times because other guys are not involved. The ball's not moving and everybody else feels stagnant, and one guy is taking all the shots and he has the green light, and it just doesn't really feel like there's a competitive team spirit playing on the floor on both ends of the floor when it's all isolation basketball. Predominantly the reason why teams that play that way usually don't never win championships. I mean, honestly, look at the OKC Thunder back in the day when they had Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook and James Harden. They had all the talent in the world, talent-wise, but the reason why they couldn't win a championship because they didn't play as a team. They couldn't beat the Miami Heat in a 7-game series back then because they couldn't play as a team. It was all isolation basketball, take-turn basketball. You take a shot, I take a shot. And then when Harden came in, he would take all the shots. And then it would just go back and forth between KD and Russ. And it was just, that take-turn basketball, isolation basketball never wins championships hardly. It's just a very, very rare situation that a team wins a championship playing basketball like that because it's not an understanding between everybody on the court, and it's not a distributing of the wealth of everybody on the court, of everybody contributing on both ends of the floor, offensively and defensively, and it just gets you beat all the time. So now, of course, this is just the regular season and everything like that, but Clippers Nation is going to have to depend on Reggie Jackson. He's the number one guy right now. Until Kawhi and PG come back, he is the number one guy, and that's who Ty Lue is going with. That's who Ty Lue's giving the green light to. And I know Ty Lue tries to distribute the wealth between other players, but those other players are just not dependable. You can't depend on Amir Coffey to contribute and be your leading scorer going forward, and you're going to win games. It's not going to happen. I mean, he'll contribute, he'll help, but he's not going to be the end all be all reason why you win. And other players on the team, there's a lot of inconsistency there. Other core players, there's some inconsistency there, and the younger players just trying to learn their way in the NBA. So I mean, it's like the team right now is very, very up and down, and they do, but in the same breath, they do need somebody to be consistent, and hopefully, for Clippers Nation, Reggie could be consistent enough to give them about 25 plus points a game. And for at least going forward, about 23, 24 points a game, at least going forward for the rest of the season until one of those, or if both of those big guns come back, because they really have nobody else to turn to. So you just hope that it's not too much isolation basketball. You hope it is good ball movement. You hope Reggie can get about 5 or 6 assists in there at least per game. And, along with his 24 points per game. And you hope that it can continue, because they're going to need every bit of what he can bring and plus more. And definitely, shout out to the Clippers. They're trying, but right now it's just really, really difficult. And right now they're in the 9th seed. They're looking up at the 8th seed and 7th seed, because they're only like a game behind both of those seeds, which is the Lakers and the Timberwolves. But it's going to be tough. It's an uphill battle. It's an uphill climb. But we're going to have to see how it unfolds. They hope that Kawhi and PG comes back, but hope is a big difference from actually being in reality. And reality is Reggie's your number one guy, and you got a bunch of role players, and you got a bunch of young guys backing them up. Hopefully they can catch on to the process quick enough to help this team win. But hey, that's my take on the situation. You leave any comments in the comment section as always. And hey, Cali out.